Welcome to the hopefully annual GWIPTY Awards. The GWIPTY Awards are a bit different to normal, established and thought out game awards at the end of the year. For one, they release at a sensible time, and two, they are about games released in the titular year. Here, we have none of that. Instead, it's about games that I played this year. And this year felt like a bit of an in-between year for me. I played so much in 2020 that it got me back into YouTube, and 2022 looks like it's got a whole host of heavy hitters lined up to vampire my time. Not to say 2021 was bad, not at all. There were quite a few big releases, but for whatever reason, I just didn't get to all the ones I'd like to. Still, if I didn't have anything to say, this video wouldn't exist, so let's get cracking with the knacking. Loop Hero. Loop Hero was one of the games I reviewed in my 7 demos video back in March. While finishing up that video, I had already bought the game. I'm pleased to say that I do not regret my purchase. The full game is everything I loved about the demo and more. For those of you that haven't seen my demo review, let me give you the short version. Loop Hero is a roguelike deck building dungeon builder. A mouthful of a genre to be sure. Basically, each game you are presented with a looping path in a wasteland. Fighting monsters will give you items and, more importantly, cards. You use these cards to add either buffs or monster spawners. But where would you add more monsters, you might ask? Well, you'll need to defeat them to level up, get more gear and get more cards. You'll find yourself striking a balance between putting down as many cards as you can to get as many drops as you can, while also not overwhelming yourself with too many monsters, because if you die, that's the end of the run. But that's not all, for you see, many tiles have combos with each other. For example, place a village near Vampire Manor, and the village will be ransacked, and instead of giving you help, will give you enemies. But wait for a number of loops, and it will transform again into the Count's Lands, which is an even better version of the village. Build 9 mountains in a grid, and suddenly you get a super mountain that spawns harpies. I cannot stress enough how much fun it is finding these combos, and combos within combos. In between loops, you have a camp with other survivors. When you return to camp, hopefully by choice and not by force, you'll be able to spend acquired resources to upgrade buildings to give you advantages in your next loops, unlock more cards, or even unlock more classes. The extra classes weren't in the demo, and they are so much fun to play. Not just slightly different configurations, but completely different playstyles, adding to the replay value even more. You have to complete a lot of loops to beat this game, and while it does get a bit grindy towards the end, there's enough variety here to carry you through a lot of loops. It really has that just one more run, oops it's 3 AM design nailed down. And that's not even getting into the amazing art style and soundtrack, which really take things to the next level. The art style makes me nostalgic for an era of gaming I've never even experienced, it's that good. The soundtrack is so good that I even bought it alongside the game and listened to it by itself. Plus, when you hit the boss and the soundtrack changes, you know things are about to go down. While some loops can take a while, maybe listen to a podcast during some of the grind, I had a great time with this game. It can take a few goes to get your head around what exactly you're supposed to do, but once you hit that zone, you can lose hours and hours to this game. Strongly recommend. As a quick follow-up to last year, Cyberpunk. So, I have a list on my computer. It's of videos that I want to make. It's a very long list, and for every one I tick off, 5, 6 or 20 take its place. One of the first things I added to this list while making the GWIPTYs last year was Cyberpunk, 1 year later. I even started making notes as I played through Cyberpunk of things that stuck out so I could make that video. Now do bear in mind also that I was one of the lucky ones in that I didn't experience much in the way of bugs or crashes or anything that those poor PlayStation 4 players had to put up with. But with that said, the reason I planned the video was I expected a lot of work to be done in the meantime. And while work has been done, most of that was just to get the game to run properly for everyone. Of course that should be the goal first and foremost, but it does mean that the game has barely changed for me, even with the newly announced content patch. Since I've had time to think about it, I really think that Cyberpunk needs more to fix than just patches and tweaks. Rebalancing loot drops or increasing FPS won't fix this game, because it is broken at the design level. Sure, they could add proper police, or steal that mod that actually implements the monorail network that was cut for time, but that's window dressing. The city just feels so dead. It's fun to look at, but that's all you can really do is look. There's no interaction with the city, there's no feeling that it's actually alive, no soul. At least all the NPCs don't duck for cover at the exact same time now. Night City is the most gorgeous and detailed painting in an open world game. It looks amazing, just don't try and touch it. In the intro, you'll see Cyberpunk's SWAT team take out some criminals as night draws in. In the first mission, you see Trauma Team airlift a platinum health insured VIP. I get the feeling that more of these sorts of events were supposed to happen dynamically as you see the city live around you, but instead, you occasionally see a few police stand around some cyber tape, and that's kind of it. Even setting aside the issues with the world, the itemization would need to be completely scrapped and redesigned. I hated the loot in Cyberpunk, to the point where I tried to ignore it as much as possible. The loot and shooter mechanics are terrible. Having to faff about with useless and boring stats to see if this pistol is any better than this other pistol that looks basically the same, or even worse is the clothing. In a game that has a lot of its theme and customizing how you look, you'll often find yourself wearing mismatched Burning Crusade tier item sets that look terrible in order to get a few more armor points. Honestly, for me, the game improved when I stopped caring about item stats and exclusively cared about how I looked. At least this could be fixed with a transmog system, or more likely modders. With all that said, I echo what I said last year. There is actually potential in this game. The city is just too beautiful to be wasted like this. The setting is too strong for this to be it. The writing and characters are stellar and the reason I played this game to completion along with most of the side stories. But for me, they need to do a Final Fantasy XIV. An almost complete reboot of the game. Almost all original systems and design decisions need to be scrapped and rebuilt from the ground up. While I was writing this, CD Projekt Red announced patch 1.5, which is the biggest patch to date. Aside from the hundreds, if not thousands of bug fixes and general improvements, we also got apartments, the ability to finally change your hair, and the promise of more depth to NPC interactions. While that is a brief overview, this seems to be more of a fix what is here approach. While watching the livestream, it does feel like the team are more than aware of the issues and are really doing all they can. 1.5 feels like a step in the direction of making Cyberpunk a really good game, but sadly, not a great one. While I'm sure this patch will give new players a much more welcoming first impression, it isn't going to be getting me back into Night City anytime soon. Fallout New Vegas. From one unpolished gem to another. There's a lot I could say about Cyberpunk, both good and bad, that I could say about Fallout New Vegas. Both are role-playing games, clearly unfinished, with excellent writing and plot. But Fallout New Vegas just works as a game a lot better than Cyberpunk does. When I talk about the underlying design of these games, Fallout was working from good ideas where Cyberpunk wasn't. Now, on the one hand, Fallout had the advantage that it's working from Fallout 3, which, despite which video essay camp you might fall into, meant that a lot of systems already existed and New Vegas just had to build off of them. Now, while this is true, Obsidian also famously only had about 3 weeks and 30 quid to actually make New Vegas, whereas CD Projekt Red had as long as they wanted and infinite money. New Vegas had been on my radar to play for years. When it first came out, I initially dismissed it, in part due to its rough launch, but also because I'd had a bad experience with Fallout 3. Nothing to do with the game technically, I enjoyed it up until the point where I was trapped in the room at the end of the game, and saved in there before I realised that there was no way out. Even if you picked the option to end the game without dying, you still got the credits and couldn't keep playing. Tens of hours of play down the drain without even finding the Republic of Dave. I was less than amused. So, time went on as it is wont to do, and New Vegas kept being brought up, on Reddit threads, among friends, on gaming news sites, being called a cult classic. I'd heard a lot about the legacy of New Vegas, but mercifully little in the way of spoilers. This year, I finally dove in to see what it was all about. And I can see what all the hype is about. See, part of the reason I was so mad at Fallout 3 breaking my save, yes, I'm still bitter, is that I was really enjoying the game up until then. A lot of the underlying systems, aesthetics, and RPG-ness of it all was really fun. New Vegas comes along and basically makes everything better. Well, most things. As I alluded to earlier, New Vegas was made on a time and cost budget, and it does show. While parts of the game will be highly detailed, you'll also find tracts of nothing and a lot of boarded up houses. But what they did manage to do is something special. Many systems have been expanded upon, such as weapons not only having upgrades, but a variety of ammo types, new systems added, such as reputation or aim down sights. I also am really glad they doubled the amount of perks you get, as it often is the most fun part about leveling up. In fact, this system was so much fun, it became Fallout 4's entire leveling system, and leveling up in that game is also great. But we can't talk about New Vegas without talking about the writing. While the writing in Fallout 3 was far from as bad as some people make out, the writing in Fallout New Vegas is top notch. While sometimes I find NPCs almost have too much to say, there's a lot of world building going on here. And the quests are great. I have yet to find a quest that didn't have multiple solutions, and many of them will really make you think about what the best course of action is. Or maybe you can't do the best course of action because your skills are too low. Do you settle for a sadder ending, or do you come back later and invest in that skill for this quest? My favourite moment in New Vegas so far is while I was killing some giant ants, I found a small, unassuming wooden door in the mountainside. Expecting a small shack, I instead found an entire vault with a very, very dark past. Vault 11. If you know, you know. While Cyberpunk may have tried to reinvent the genre with amazing tech and promises of next-gen AI and immersion, New Vegas just goes to show that sometimes sticking to the basics and absolutely nailing them can create something pretty special. And yes, I will finish this one on stream. Dragon Quest Builders 2. I've always liked Minecraft, or rather, I've always liked the idea of Minecraft. A block-based builder where the only limit is your imagination and time. Sadly for me, both of these are limited. Sure, I'd have an idea that I'd make a huge mansion or carve out a mining network in the side of a mountain, but I'd always wonder what rooms I should build or what should go in them, or I just wouldn't have the time to carve out a whole mountain. Outside of that, I'd struggle to create goals for myself or know what to do next. Needless to say, every time I tried Minecraft all wide-eyed and full of dreams, I'd put it down not long after with little to show. Then one day, someone put Minecraft in a blender with a JRPG, and it turns out this was the answer to all of my problems. So, let me try to explain this weird chimera. On the JRPG side of things, you are the chosen hero on a quest to save the land from darkness. You need to do this by beating up monsters, making friends, and generally saving the world. But rather than travel from town to town, solving problems and recruiting people, you travel from ruin to ruin, turning them into bustling towns full of people whose problems need solving. Now for the clever bit. If you build a room in the game will acknowledge that. If you place the right furniture in a room, it becomes that room. Place a bed and a light source in a room, and it's a bedroom where people will actually sleep. Place a cooking fire and a chest in a room, and your villagers will cook for you and eat food. Throne rooms, armories, toilets, bathhouses, bars, the list goes on and on and on. There are so many furniture items to play with, and a real direction given to the player of how to use them. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of customization available, such as what materials do you use? Do you want to add extra furnishings that just make it look prettier? But it gave me that direction that I lack for myself. Now, I plan out my villages. Where will the bar be? Where will the people sleep? Etc. As a sequel, Dragon Quest Builders 2 essentially made the first game obsolete. If you want to play both, play the first one first. You'll have a fun time, but there is no going back after 2. It's the perfect sequel, improving almost every aspect of the first and addressing many of the complaints that I had with it. The first game was a weird experiment after all, and this really feels like a refinement of that idea. For example, you'll be given several tools in Dragon Quest Builders 2 to help you with your building, such as a tool to change all the floor tiles in an area. This sounds small, but it means you'll be able to plan things out without having to commit to it. You could try a mahogany floor and decide that actually marble is the way to go without having to destroy your entire kitchen. But one of the biggest improvements is giving you a central island to build on. You see, in the first game, once you finish a map, it's on to the next one, never to return. All that hard work is essentially reset. And there are levels like this in 2 as well, but when you come back to your central base, it'll be with new followers and crafting recipes. This gives you a persistent town to really go to town on. God, that was terrible. And I've spent hours here, not advancing the game, but just being creative like I wish I could have been in Minecraft. I sit here writing this script and I still do not truly understand how this game managed to get me to finally put the effort into this genre. Is it the direction in what I'm building? Is it the story attached to the game, giving me a sense of purpose and progression? Maybe it's how much easier it is to build things in third person and only 2 blocks high. Or even something else that I'm missing. Whatever it is, I love it, and I'll be spending many more hours honing my little farming village until I get it just right. Hitman: World of Assassination. Obviously, there was a big gap between the first and second GWIPTY Awards. If I had done one every year, then Hitman would have won 2 of them. Luckily, with the third and final game in the trilogy releasing this year, I can give this award to the Hitman: World of Assassination trilogy as a whole. This game is amazing. With the trilogy out, we can essentially consider this one huge Hitman game, and it really feels like the culmination of 2 decades worth of work, tweaking, refining, and experimenting with a formula that may as well be as close to perfection as it's going to get. The simple premise is you play as Agent 47, a bald, barcoded superhuman clone made to be the perfect assassin. You'll be sent on a globe-trotting adventure to take down high-flying socialites, armed insurrectionists, Illuminati-style conspirators, and more. Each level is absolutely huge, and even after playing through 20 levels, starting a new one can feel overwhelming. But if you can get over that fear of the unknown and just dive right in, there is so much to see and do. The mechanics are deceptively simple. You'll usually have an open and unrestricted area to play in, overhear conversations and pick up clues or possible vulnerabilities to your target. Then, if you can incapacitate an NPC, you can disguise yourself as various characters. The basic disguises like guards will allow you into more restricted areas, but maybe valets are more welcome in the kitchens or behind the bar. Or maybe a police officer is allowed in certain areas, but the bodyguards are allowed upstairs. As you play, you'll slowly piece together which disguise you need for what job, where to find them, what order you'll need to find them in, and so on. But even then, there are unique disguises, so just dressing up as a model that kind of looks like 47, which in turn allows you to meet with the director of the fashion show, who happens to have a nasty accident. Experimentation is the name of the game here, and the expression is, wait, you can do that? It is amazing the level of detail in these levels. Apart from shooting, stabbing, drowning, electrocuting, pushing, strangling, or poisoning your prey, each level will have not one, but often several unique assassination opportunities. Many of these unique methods will be like mini-stories, which can lead the player by hand, or just offer vague hints if you prefer. These can be good ways to get the lay of the land. But if after that your bloodlust isn't sated, you'll find that each level has tons of extra challenges, ranging from the obvious, such as using fibre wire on both targets, to the not so obvious, such as knocking both targets out with a fish. Yes, a fish. Hitman has a sense of humour about it too. I'm not exaggerating when I say I spent over 20 hours in some levels. Even the training levels have a good amount of replay value in them, and if that's not enough, you have escalations, user-generated contracts, alternative campaigns, and so much more. Buying all 3 games can seem like a steep investment, but if you love this game, you can spend hundreds of hours in it and never feel like a grind. But we all know you've not beaten a level until you've beat it just in your suit. Hitman 3 was a perfect cap off to the trilogy. Aside from looking stunning, the devs also really mixed up the formula again with the levels. From the private investigator in Dartmoor to the pick your prey party in Berlin, Hitman 3 proves there is still life left in this formula after 3 games and 21 levels. While for me, I'll always have Paris, Mendoza does a good job of capping off the series with a no gimmicks, solidly designed level. There is something here for everyone, and I know I have a lot more murder to commit before I finally call it a day. After all that, there are still things to talk about with this game. I want to tell you about the time I impersonated a masseuse, or how 47 is apparently a competent Formula 1 driver. This game is packed not only with content, but moments that feel fresh and natural dozens of hours in, something that few games can manage. 10 out of 10. Get this game. Thanks for watching, everyone. I know this video hasn't come out in the traditional time frame for these sorts of things, but I may have been slightly sidetracked by some of the games from next year's GWIPTYs. I do want to try to make one of these a year though. Plus, it felt good to finally recognise Hitman in this video. It's been a long time coming. The response to my Space Marine video has been overwhelming, so thanks everyone for that, I really do appreciate it. Now though, I'm ready to get back into making more videos. I want to try and make a few more this year than last year, some smaller reviews, both old and new games, though I do have my eyes on some larger projects too, so keep an eye out for that. Basically, I hope to make more than 4 videos this year. If you made it this far, I would be very grateful if you could share this or any of my other videos around, as I'm pretty sure I'm algorithm poison. Them's the breaks. Right, well I've had fun chit-chatting about games, and I hope you've enjoyed the listen. Feel free to tell me your personal GWIPTYs in the comments below. I do read them all. Until next time,